I ultimately made my grandfather, Victor, pay a stunning price for his betrayal. And it all started with the death of the man I admired most in this world, my father, Daniel. When I was a kid, my father was my best friend. He was a true force of nature, working multiple jobs to support our family, all while powering his way through law school. With a couple of his friends, he even built 2 small businesses from the ground up. Despite all this, he was always there, spending as much time as he could with my mother Helen, my baby siblings, and me. He was the best dad ever. Then, one day, the world tilted on its axis. We found out he had stage 4 stomach cancer. The kind you don't come back from. My mother and I stayed by his side through it all. Until the very end. My last clear memory of him is a painful one. He was completely immobile. A network of tubes keeping him tethered to the world. And I just prayed he still knew who I was. He couldn't speak. Couldn't move. But he managed to smile at me. A flicker in his eyes that let me know his son was still recognized. A few days later, after a brief coma, he woke up one last time to say goodbye to my mother before he passed away. My mom was a housewife. So with him gone, we were left adrift with almost nothing. Then, my grandfather, Victor, made his entrance. He was one of those self-centered boomer types, for whom every story is somehow about him. After my dad died, I'd catch him using the newspaper obituary to boast about my dad's grades and achievements. Just in case you're wondering. Yes, we are Asian. It was then I realized that to him, my father was little more than a trophy to be polished. While my mother was drowning in grief, he graciously offered to take control of my father's 2 businesses to support us. She agreed, having no experience in that world. This was the moment the serpent entered the garden. My mother, blinded by grief, saw a helping hand, not knowing it was the hand that would slowly choke us for years to come. Throughout our childhood, those businesses never seemed to provide much. We were told they just weren't thriving without my dad. Mom worked a series of jobs just to keep our heads above water. My grandfather, Victor, made a grand show of offering to help put me and my siblings through school. I was lucky enough to score some scholarships, but he did help my siblings. And for that, we were grateful. It wasn't until I graduated and started my own career as a high school teacher that the ground fell out from under me. I learned my family was broke, and my 2 siblings were still struggling through medical school. My sister, Sarah, even offered to quit and get a job to help out. But I told her to keep going. She was brilliant and deserved to see it through. The reason for our sudden crisis? My grandparents had cut us off. They didn't approve of my siblings' career paths, especially Sarah's. My grandmother, a misogynist of the old school, once told her, "Why are you wasting your time and money becoming a doctor? You're just going to have children and quit." That's when I was contacted by Mr. Lim, one of my dad's old business partners. I asked him how the company was doing. And the truth, hidden for over a decade, came spilling out. My grandfather, Victor, who was still in control of my father's shares, was siphoning money from the company for himself. He was earning far more than the pittance he gave us for our education. This revealed my grandfather's greatest fatal flaw, his bottomless pride. He didn't just want our money. He needed to be worshipped for giving us back the crumbs And that need for adoration would ultimately be the key to his undoing. All those years, he'd made us feel indebted to him for money that was ours to begin with. He lied, telling us the companies were failing. When he cut us off, he was cutting us off from our own inheritance, trying to force my siblings to abandon the careers they had worked their whole lives for. It was our father's money, meant to secure our futures. And his own father was defecating on his legacy for personal enrichment. To make it worse, I found out he'd used his position to seize the company's prime office space. He forced them into a smaller, cheaper office while he personally rented the original space out to their competitors. All while I was working multiple jobs to help my family pay the bills. Cue the revenge. My grandfather's greatest weakness has always been his pride. He wanted everyone to think he was a hero, a benevolent patriarch supporting his grieving family from his own pocket. The first step was legal. No matter what Victor said, my mother, my siblings, and I were the legal owners of my father's shares. With a statement signed by all of them, I approached the board of directors. I informed them that I was now the sole representative of my late father Daniel's estate. My grandfather had made himself chairman of the board, a title with no actual work attached. Just a way to funnel money to himself. I argued that since he was only chairman as a representative of my father's estate, his authority was now mine. I had no intention of keeping the position, but I needed it for what came next. Then, I exposed his shady office rental deal to our extended family, who pressured him into evicting the competitor he had so cozily installed. The day of the next board meeting arrived. As I sat in the chairman's seat, waiting, a line from an old movie came to mind. "No, grandfather. I expect you to die." Of course, I didn't want him to literally die. But I did want his reign of deceit and arrogance to end. Publicly and humiliatingly. He strode into the conference room, puffed up with his usual self-importance, ready to preside over the meeting. He stopped short. All the board members were already seated, silent, watching him. His designated chair at the head of the table was spun around, facing away from him. He looked confused, a flicker of irritation crossing his face. And then, like a Bond villain, I slowly spun the chair around to face him. The blood drained from his face. The confident posture evaporated, replaced by a slack-jawed shock. He saw me, his grandson, the quiet school teacher, sitting in his seat of power. I let the silence hang in the air for a moment before speaking. The company and my family no longer require your services, I said, my voice steady. I will be taking control over the representation of my father's estate from now on. He stammered, his eyes darting around the room for an ally and finding none. Do you know that I'm the one who put him and his siblings through school? He blustered, a desperate attempt to reclaim his narrative of benevolence. I leaned forward and delivered the final blow. The words I had waited a lifetime to say. No. Dad did. The look of sheer, unadulterated embarrassment on his face was perfect. I had never, in my entire life, seen him look defeated until that moment. It was a satisfaction that simply ratting him out could never have achieved. I stepped down as chairman, taking a modest job as a bookkeeper in the company's treasury department. Now, the profits and dividends would go where my father always intended them to go. And one of my first decisions as a board member was to give my mother the permanent, dignified job she deserved. My grandfather is now jobless. He lives a life of quiet irrelevance. his pride shattered. Having spent his life being selfish, he has no friends to turn to. The power trips and boasting that fueled him are gone. Even my grandmother has had enough. They don't even sleep in the same room anymore. Now, I know some of you might be thinking this sounds highly implausible. That a real company with a board would have safeguards to prevent this. You'd be right. The problem was that during all this, the only lawyer involved with the company was my grandfather. And he did nothing to protect it. When we hired a team of actual lawyers, they pointed out all the same holes you're probably thinking of. They're still working to clean up the mess he created so we don't get into trouble. And just when you think it's over, there's an update. As one person rightly guessed, some people never change. They come in as an asshole and they go out like one. My sister Sarah recently told me Victor is more miserable than ever. Why? Because my grandmother is furious that he siphoned what was left of their own money to an extramarital sugar baby. Likely another pathetic attempt to find someone to glorify him. I guess he hasn't learned a thing. I just hope he lives out the rest of his short life regretting that he didn't choose a path of compassion and humility. In the end, this story is a harsh reminder that greed and pride can sever even the tightest family bonds. But a legacy built on love and integrity, like my father's, is powerful enough to find justice, even from beyond the grave. What would you do if you discovered a devastating betrayal at the hands of your own family?